different from the idea of these universal visions of the end of the world. We will still thinking of let's have our birth first and then we will talk about the other end. The thing is, we have people who believe that this kind of war is going to happen one way or the other, whether we want it or not, because there are people and there are not organizations but societies that are planning to bring that about. And some people in Egypt say that even these uprisings that are happening in the Arab world now are part of this.
Part of the preparation.
Yes, for this chaotic war at one point.
But what do they see as the antagonists in the war? In the Christian tradition, it's Christ and Antichrist, but I don't know what it is in the Muslim tradition.
You see, in the Muslim tradition, we talk about Jesus and Muhammad come from the same line of messengers, and Jesus is only a human being. He's not. So, those who falsely believe in the idea of God or Son of God are those who really belong to the clan of Antichrist. And so they falsely call themselves that they are the people defending Christ, and they will launch this war for this reason. And it will be
war against Islam.
And in that case, it will be against Islam. A friend of mine asks you, if this is the story, where does science stand?
Science?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the United States, it's tottering. I mean, at MIT, it's fine. But if you go into the country, there's a lot of anti-science feeling. I mean, probably half the population thinks the world was created 10,000 years ago. 85% believe in miracles. There's a general, you can see it in the Republican primaries if you watch it, because they're kind of drawing from these sectors. But there's a strong, actually it's kind of similar to the sectors that the Nazis drew from. It's petty bourgeois, small businessmen. I don't want to be bothered by the government. I don't trust the intellectuals. Let me give you a concrete example. A while back, we had to get our house painted, and so we got some local guy to come paint the house. And we got to know him. He's painting. The story was he used to be a painting contractor and had a business. But then the government bureaucrats, these pointy-headed bureaucrats, came around and told everyone that they're not allowed to use lead paint because some crazy scientist said lead paint is harmful. He knows it's not harmful. It's all his life. It's fine, And the bureaucrats forced him to abandon his business because the regulations are.
Yes, it's no longer allowed.
And he can't make a living that way, and the lead paint is the only thing that works, and so on and so forth. He doesn't believe the science at all. He thinks it's just invented by a bunch of crazy intellectuals at Harvard. Who cares? What do they know? Have they ever run a business? Did they ever sign a check? And that attitude is very widespread. And that's why you have a majority of global warming skeptics. Why should we believe the scientists? What do they know? And it's true across the board. So science is, there's a segment of the population, of course, an educated sector that accepts it, but it's not part of the general society. Even right here, and it's not just Texas, right here in Boston. This guy was from the suburb part of the.
And what do you think of the situation in our part of the world now?
The war.
Our part of the world now, the Middle East.
Well, of course, there's always been a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment. It exploded after 9/11, and now it's total ignorance. In fact, even in educated intellectuals sectors, total ignorance. Like, for example, it's taken for granted that the Arab world supports a war against Iran. I mean, educated people can read the polls, but they don't. It's just a fact. They don't care what the polls say. And that's, the Harvard faculty, it's not, I'm not talking about, and nothing is known about the Arab world. I mean, I try to learn about it, but the things you told me are totally good. And now there's a further thing going on. The Obama administration and a lot of the strategic analysts are switching their concerns to the Pacific because they're worried about China. And that concern is a very interesting one. If you take a look at it, it's considered, could lead to war even. The reason is that China is trying to control the waters off its coast, and the United States wants to control the waters off China's coast. So that's a conflict that could lead to war. You can read the major journals, National Interest has an article about it. This is the kind of thing that's going to lead to war. But it's taken for granted that we have equivalent rights. I mean, they're, just a couple minutes more, Bevan, they're trying to control the waters off their coast. We have a right to control the water off their coast. There's no talk about a Chinese military base in the Caribbean, for example. But the assumption that fundamentally we own the world is very deeply rooted. And there, it was kind of like a concocted challenge to it. And Saddam Hussein is a sort of a challenge to Iran, but it's nothing like the challenge of China.
Yeah.
So military forces, military expenditures, reconstructing the Navy and the Army, it's kind of very China-oriented. And that will put the Middle East slightly in the back order, which would probably be a good thing.
For now.
For the Middle East. I mean, that's what happened with Latin America. As the United States got less and less interested in it, it began to have a chance to move towards independence.
But we have the one factor that will make it always volatile. Oil and the Arab-Israeli.
The Arab-Israeli, well, the U.S. has never wanted this, didn't care about them. In fact, I think they're pretty happy with the way the Arab-Israeli conflict is going. I mean, the Palestinians are, I think, in a desperate situation. They have no outside support. They're internally too corrupt to do anything. Israel is just systematically taking over whatever it wants with U.S. support. Europe can peep of protest, but doesn't mean anything. The third world doesn't like it, but they don't have any role in world affairs. So they'll just let it continue.
If you think of a young generation between the ages of 15 and 18 in Egypt right now, what is the message that you would like to tell them?
I may go there in October and have a chance to think about it. I mean, I think they basically have to do what has in fact happened in Latin America, which nobody ever predicted. I mean, Latin America was considered a totally subservient region of the world. Backyard.
So what are you thinking? Do you want to talk?
Within 10 years, Latin America has integrated and changed enough so that the U.S. is virtually excluded from Latin America at this point. It wasn't reported, but the conference in Colombia a couple weeks ago was pretty remarkable. I mean, there were two big issues. It was a hemisphere conference. One issue was Cuba. The entire rest of the continent wants to bring Cuba back in. The U.S. refuses. The other issue, which is kind of interesting, is the drug war. The rest of the continent understands very well that the problem of the drug war is here, and they're the ones who are suffering from it. So even the conservative presidents, the military, all of them, they said, just decriminalize drugs. You guys have the problem. You have the demand. You're providing the guns. We're getting killed. Decriminalize it, and then you worry about your problem. That's almost the entire continent. The U.S. refused. So nothing came out of the conference. There was no statement. But the next conference, if there is one, may very well exclude the United States. I mean, that would have been inconceivable 15 years ago. And I think that's what the Arab world ought to think about. It's tricky. You've got dictatorships. You've got Saudi Arabia. emirates, and it's not always easy to get rid of all of this. But, Latin America had vicious dictators.
Worse, even worse.
Worse ones.
Mm-hmm.
And they've slowly overthrown them and moved towards independence, social change, mild social democracy, they have horrible internal problems,
Mm-hmm.
but they're dealing with them. And in fact, the reason that the West hated Nasser so much, basic reason, was he was talking about using energy resources for the benefit of the region. And that's totally unthinkable. It's our resources.
Mm-hmm.
But now, so there are resources that can be used for modernization and development. The Arab world doesn't have a long period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oil is a wasting resource. And unless things are done pretty quickly, the chance could be lost. And it could be a situation where hundreds of millions of people are just going to starve. Egypt, for example, had rich agricultural resources. Egypt in the 1830s was pretty much like the United States.
Yes.
It had a modernizing leader, Muhammad Ali, had cotton, had the fuel of the Industrial Revolution, had rich agriculture, was beginning to industrialize, just pretty much like the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The main difference was the United States was independent. Egypt was controlled by Britain and France. So Britain and France just wouldn't let it happen by force. And so Egypt goes one way, the United States goes another way, but that can be reconstructed.
I hope. I have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
As a linguist, how would you describe your experience with the Arabic language and the Quran?
Well, I studied Arabic seriously when I was a college student. I was a teenager. And I got to the point where I could read a newspaper. My crowning achievement was to read Ayam Tahsin.
Mm-hmm.
Read it by myself. I was good enough to do that. I read some Quran in the original. And unfortunately, I didn't keep it up. Someday I'd like to resurrect it. By now it's all disappeared, but it's probably back there somewhere.
Can I be helpful here?
If I can ever get myself back into starting to learn it again, I'd really like to. But I have, it's what I was planning to do. When I was a teenager, it sounds kind of idealistic, but my goal was to go to Palestine and to work for Arab-Jewish reconciliation, socialist binationalism. So I wanted to know Arabic. I knew some Hebrew. I did go. I was kind of disillusioned when I got there.
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't expected. I lived in a kibbutz for a while. My wife and I in the early 50s, but it was a nice place. I liked it, but the racism.
Beyond limit.
They couldn't perceive it.
Beyond limit.
It was partly. It was not only directed against Arabs. In some ways, it was worse against Moroccan Jews. I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
This kibbutz where I was the center of Arab outreach. So it's where they had the Arab newspaper, Mersad, tried to organize, Arab voters, work with them. And I was once working out in the field picking grapes. It was over the summer, so the kids were out of school. And I noticed a bunch of teenage kids were kind of pushing each other around, some kind of thing going on. The woman who ran an older woman, our age, older than us, who ran the agriculture, went over to see what was going on, and she sort of calmed them down. And when she came back, I asked her, what's going on? And she said, well, the kibbutz kids had thought that those other darker kids were Moroccans, and they were taunting them and so on. But she went over and told them, no, they're Arabs visiting from a neighboring village. You have to treat them nicely.
Mm-hmm.
The implication is if they were Moroccan kids, you can do whatever you want. And that's just part of the culture. I've seen that.
Did it happen one day that you read the works of some Arab linguist who worked centuries ago,
Siboy. I studied that, in fact.
Al-Jirjani. His name is Al-Jirjani.
I don't know that, but we did study Siboy, I remember, 8th century.
I want you to allow me to send you samples of his work.
Yes.
When is he, what period?
Sometime after Sibawayh. Not very far from Sibawayh, but sometime later than Sibawayh. And we think that his works influenced the Swiss linguist who started the modern trend of
Saussure.
Yeah.
Really? It's interesting.
I'm sorry, time's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was there a connection between them, or you're just thinking of the intellectual connection?
The way the mentality works.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Unfortunately, I can no longer, I'm not competent anymore to read it in Arabic.
You can count on me
Yeah.
if you allow me to stay in touch.
Yeah, sure, let's try it.
I'm leaving in 15 days, and I think it.
I can't do anything in the next couple of weeks.
No, I mean I have your email. I will
Oh.
send you everything.
Oh, good. You're
And,
going back to Egypt?
Yeah, I'm going back to Egypt. Yes. Although I found out that I'm more important here for the second generation of Muslims who really need to learn Arabic, but I cannot stay, and I cannot stay without my family.
Is your family there?
Yes.
Are you going to go back to teaching?
Yes, I'm going back to teaching that.
Will you be in Cairo?
Now in a small city 80 kilometers from Cairo. I'm planning to move to Cairo sometime. But please allow me to stay in touch.
Sure, please do.
And one other thing, the Egyptians never go in and go out empty-handed.
Oh,
I must have a gift from Professor Tchomsky before I leave. And you choose.
then I'll have to give you, except the book.
That will be an honor.
That would be okay. I'll see that.